Everyone thinks of a beast as a large, frightening, unusual animal. Well, that description certainly fits the Beast roller coaster at Kings Island. Hello, everyone. Alongside Ryan Sir, I'm Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics.
Tower Topics is a podcast by Kings Island fans for Kings Island fans, because that's who we are and that's who we care about. So, Don, 45 years in the making, they dropped the name of the beast. Now, the ride itself had been announced, but no name yet.
No, when it was announced that they were building this record-breaking attraction in the summer of 1978, no name. They just said it was going to be the champion roller coaster, the best that's out there, the ultimate ride experience, but no name yet. So they spent months trying to figure out what's the right name that's going to fit this monster that we're building. And Ruth Voss was the public relations manager at Kings Island at the time, and she would get updates from the maintenance, staff, the carpenters would come into her office and always update her on where they were today with the progress. And oftentimes they would refer to it as a beast of a project, and it was. But that kind of stuck with Ruth was, they kept calling it a beast of a project. So she thought it's going to be in a densely wooded, type area, that maybe that would be a good name for the ride. So, she suggested that to the marketing director, who shared it with the general manager, and then everybody gets together talking about it, and they all loved it, but they thought, we like it, but what would the public think? So what they did was they conducted interviews with members of 5 special groups. Now, they included males and females in their early teens, late teens, early 20s. All had visited Kings Island during the past couple of seasons. So we're talking about 1976, 77. And they'd all ridden at least one of the park's top 2 major coasters at the time, the Screamin' Demon or the Racer. Now, the group members, they all felt that the name conjured up those impressions of wildness, fright, challenge, power. So they felt that, that name, kind of connected with them. They thought, some of the responses were, it's something that's out in the woods and it's kind of sitting there and it's terrifying. That name would really make me want to get on it. It says this isn't going to be cotton candy and snow cones. This is going to be something special. So when they were getting that kind of feedback from these 5 different groups, they decided that would be the name. And then they had to start work on creating a logo for the ride. And by February 6th of 1979, now this ride opened on April 13th with Media Day, and the public day was April 14th. So that wasn't that much time between announcing the name and when it opened, but it was very exciting when they announced. I can remember, seeing that on the news. It was the local station here, WKRC TV in Cincinnati, Channel 12, and I remember them talking about it. Now, they were owned by Taft, who owned the park, so obviously they were going to be the ones breaking it, but they showed the logo, and it was impressive, and I couldn't wait to ride it.
Absolutely. Now, we have touched on this before, and I don't remember if it was on this one or the Attractions Group podcast, but was it unique at the time to announce, we're going to do this wooden roller coaster? It's going to be the longest, at the time, the longest roller coaster in the world, break all these records. We don't have a name yet. Was that common, or was that unique to the Beast?
That was kind of unique to the Beast, I think, because when the Screamin' Demon was announced, it had its name. When other rides were announced, they had their name. So I think it was a little bit unique to the Beast. I think they had to announce it. Now, in terms of being able to announce it, there was oftentimes you didn't know what the park was going to be doing until, it was 2-3 months away from opening day. They could hold off. There wasn't social media then. You didn't have people flying drones and everything over the park trying to see, construction updates and all that. So they knew, though, that the guests were going to know something big was happening in the summer of 78. So they had it fenced off, and there was all the construction going on. If you went up to the Eiffel Tower, you could see some of the, the bulldozers and that, that were positioned out behind the fence. So you knew something big was happening. So they kind of maybe felt like we have to announce something now because the media was inquiring about it, but just not ready to unveil that name yet. But I'm glad they took the time to get it right. And, when you look at names of rides, you want something that's going to go, that has a long shelf life, that you're not going to be updating and changing that. That's going to be able to sell merchandise, decades after the ride debuted. And that's exactly what happened with the Beast.
Yeah, I completely agree, and very little has changed about the theme to the beast and stuff. Um, it's been a little bit of modernization with the logo and stuff, but it's absolutely recognizable to what was seen at the time. Now, to dispel any rumors, a lot of people for a long time believed that the champion was going to be the name of the beast, but that's not true, correct?
No, it was not going to be champion. The way they phrased it in 1978 when they announced it was this was going to be the champion roller coaster, meaning the best,
Mhm.
the winner, the ultimate. That's where that came from. So, as years go by and, people start to share different stories or what they heard, what they remembered, then it becomes, oh, they were going to name it champion. No, it was just that they referred to it as it was going to be the champion of all roller coasters.
Have you heard anything else as far as other names that were seriously considered?
Nothing really, that sticks with me that they were talking about. But there was just, they everything that they came up with, it just didn't fit. Nobody was excited about it. Nobody felt that it depicted what the ride experience was going to be. So they just kept kicking things around. I mean, there was hundreds of names that they probably all, bantied about
Hmm.
that we could call it this, we could call it that. They never got to where they were doing logo concepts of anything else or anything. So didn't get to that point. But I do remember, like distinctly, remember when the name came out and it was on, like I said, WKRC TV in Cincinnati, and that logo popped on the screen, and you know, it just caught your attention. It just looked like I want to ride it. Like all those different focus groups that they did with the individuals taking part in that, what they were saying, is what it was going to be. Like it sounds like something you want to go out and conquer. That was my thoughts. I just had really gotten into because I was riding the racer, and then the came about. It gone to Americana and had ridden their wooden coaster there, the Screeching Eagle. So I was just getting into roller coasters, but this was that I couldn't wait to conquer it.
Absolutely. Now you mentioned like they had the name, and I'm guessing if nothing else went to concept, when they brought it to the focus groups, they were pretty certain that that was going to be the name. But you've told a couple different anecdotes about different names when you were part of Kings Island, Beast and not Beast, but Banshee and Diamondback and so on. Were focus groups ever involved, or is that something that it's kind of like internally you can kind of build the story around the name, or how's the process different
Not
today?
early when I was. Yeah, like with Diamondback, it was as simple as the general manager, Greg Scheid, just, let everybody know in a staff meeting, we're doing this roller coaster, keep it under wraps. And oh, by the way, it's going to need a name if you want to shoot me an email. It was that simple where I just went back in my office and thought, well, what would fit? And I thought of the beast, I thought of the logo, and, what would be a name that would be able to come up, you'd be able to come up with a logo that would be long lasting and, 20, 30 years now, they're still selling merchandise for it. And I thought the characteristics of Diamondback, fit a Diamondback snake, that just big, mean, aggressive. So I just shot an email and said, how about Diamondback? Half hour later or so, he, came down the hall, knocked on my door, and he said, Diamondback. I like that. He goes, let me run it up the flagpole. So he, just went to Cedar Fair and Rob Decker and the planning and design team, and they liked it. And it was that simple. Um, Other rides, Mystic Timbers, that was something that, by that time the agency was getting involved in the naming of attractions. And, you had a lot of cooks in the kitchen with it. And they were, talking to different folks, groups about names at that point in time. So we're talking 2017. So I had experiences both ways where sometimes it was as simple as we could name it. Tropical Plunge, another one. We just needed a name, let's just figure this out, So, as a marketing team, we just sat down and we came up with Tropical Plunge. So it was pretty easy on that one, pretty easy on Diamondback. Red's Hall of Fame Grill, same thing, just throw out a name and we did it. Mystic Timbers, that one was back and forth. I mean, there were a lot of different names bantied about on that one. Orion, another one, a lot of discussion with that one. What could it be? Uh, but there was, Orion seemed to be that name that was, the leader throughout the process and what it ended up to be. But there were others considered.
Yeah, Orion's a cool name. It sounds, when you say it, it sounds big, you know.
Yeah, the general manager, Mike Kuntz, he was, that was a name that he really
Mhm.
liked. And I'm glad that the park moved forward with that because I think that was just a perfect name for that attraction.
Yeah, perfect. It was a really good name, and the really cool the video and stuff that went with it really worked well. Now, Mystic Timbers, going back to that, uh, I can see why that was kicked around because my feelings on that name have changed substantially. So I heard the name Mystic Timbers before it was announced, as I have tendency to do, not from you, to be clear. Um, and I remember thinking like, "There's no way this information's right. There's no that's so weird. That's not the name." And then, this is a couple weeks before the announcement. It starts getting closer and closer, and I'm hearing it from more and more people. And I'm like, there's no way they're going with that. And then after like seeing the video and stuff like that, I'm like, okay, well the name at least makes sense. And nowadays it's kind of like I couldn't imagine it being anything else. And furthermore, they clearly took a page from that book when they named Twisted Timbers. So from your standpoint,
Yeah.
when the agency or whomever came to you with Mystic Timbers, was it like what, or did it kind of fit the vision that you had?
Well, I think at that time, once the name was established, then the backstory was going to be established. So we knew that we wanted it to be a story-driven
Hmm.
attraction. So we worked back from the name. Okay, now it's going to be this. What's that story about? And that's where you came up with like the shed and those types of things. Now, uh, I will. I think we might have talked about this on a previous episode, but when it came to what's in the shed, the reason that that came about is because construction had started in July, and they were getting ready to start. You know, the first bents and that were ready to go. So when you get to that point to where vertical construction's beginning and you're riding the train and everybody's going around, they're all going to know it's a wooden roller coaster. So we had to move it up. Normally you go, that late in that first week in August, mid-August type range to announce your new attraction for the next year. So to do it at the end of July was a little earlier, but we weren't there yet with what was going to be in the shed. There was a lot of different concepts. Some things might have been too intense. You look at the height requirement for that. There was going to be some younger guests riding it. Can't be too scary for them, but it's got to be scary enough. So everything was, you know, up in the air with as to what that was going to be when it was time to announce, and we had to put that, animation video together. So we just thought we would stop short of the shed and, you know, we'll make it like one of those cliffhangers and we'll just say, what's in the shed. And that's how that came about because we did not know what was going to be in there at the time. When we stood up there and made that announcement, Greg Scheid and I, we did not know exactly what was going to be in the shed. So when we said hashtag what's in the shed, that was a question that we wanted to know about that as much as our guests did. So it wasn't until maybe late December, early January where that started to come together exactly what that was going to be.
Yeah. What I had heard is the last 800 feet will be a quote unquote show element with projectors. That says I probably knew about what you did.
Well, we knew that.
Yeah, that
Yeah, we knew that, but we didn't know exactly what that was going to be. Oh, it's going to be snakes. Oh, it's going to be bats. Oh, it's going to be. Well, how about if it's every time somebody rides, it's a different thing. So what's in this shed still applies because as you're riding, you don't know which one of those shows you're going to get. So it still works with what's in the shed.
yeah, and it's kind of funny
But
with that where the people that were disappointed it's not a drop track or something. It would have been malpractice not to market it if it was a drop track. To have a whole element of the
yeah,
ride and you shoot backward and stuff, for that to be just a surprise for media day would be marketing malpractice. But we're talking about names here. But so you're saying
but
that for a lot for so when you first started, so early on when we're talking about like because you weren't there for um X Flight slash Firehawks naming, um that was a little bit before your time, but for Diamondback, it was kind of like, hey, we got this ride, we need a name, everybody submit a name, and yours, yeah, I like that one, okay. And then for Banshee, was it kind of
yeah,
the same way, or was that closer to the agency?
Banshee, we started to talk about some names, but there was a feeling that you know what that ride was going to be, what it was,
Hmm.
was kind of controversial and everything,
Uh-huh.
with Son of Beast, so there was going to be a lot of just it wasn't just you're adding a new ride; it was going to be what had been there before. So we needed it to be something that really stood out. We liked the night rides that we had at the park. Everyone thought about the Beast and Diamondback. They were great night rides. We wanted a name that was going to fit really well at night. And Cedar Point had was going to use that name for a coaster. They didn't, so that name was still sitting there,
Yeah.
still trademarked, and it was just, hey, what do you guys think about using this? Sure. We love it, we like it. We wanted a different logo than what they had, but the name fit for what we were looking to do with that, and it was great for the teaser campaign to have the screeching banshee sounds coming when you were walking through Action Zone. You'd hear that screech and you didn't know where it was coming from or what it was, or you had the scarecrows behind the fence, the silver combs that we left in different places around the park. So I think teaser campaign wise, I think that was one of the best that the park had ever done, with a new attraction that was coming with Banshee.
Yeah, my favorite part of the teaser campaign was when you'd look through the knot holes in the fence and there'd be a scarecrow looking back at you. That was fun.
Oh yeah,
I like
yeah,
that.
yeah. It was fun just watching people's reaction when they would see that. But no, but circling back to the Beast, 45 years. It's hard to believe that this is going to be the 45th anniversary, of that coaster. It has withstood the test of time. Many wooden coasters, for a lot of reasons, just don't make it that long in life,
Hmm.
and it's still, going as strong as ever. And I am just really excited about the and pleased and proud about the work that the Kings Island maintenance team, and the commitment that they have had to keep that ride in tip-top shape for future generations to enjoy. So I've been riding for 45 years. So the hope is that 45 years from now, my daughter's grandkids are able to ride it. It's great to see the commitment that the park has to preserving, those iconic attractions, the Beast, the Racer. I mean, just a lot of money has gone into those rides, and sometimes it's an easy decision for parks of it's costing us too much. Let's get rid of it. Well, that's not been the case at Kings Island. They want to preserve these attractions. They're iconic. They know what those rides mean to the guest, and just really can't say enough great things about that commitment that they have there.
Absolutely. And for people in the industry that are listening, they did a bunch of retrack work. The Gravity Group did it. I'm sure you're familiar with them, but I will make a testament where if you had ridden the Beast or the Racer 5 years ago, come ride it this season and then tell me what the difference is. And then do it to your wood coasters because it remains wood. Just how they do it is a little bit different. And we've got an episode with Mike Graham from Gravity Group on Attractions Group podcast where he goes more into depth about the rehab that they do. But it feels like a year-old coaster rather than a 45-year-old coaster at this point. So very, very cool.
Yeah, it does.
Awesome. Cool. Hey, 45 years with the Beast, and I've never known a world without it because the Beast is older than I am. But let's move on to the listener question. This is from Adventures with Parker. He said, I've been thinking about this since Coney Island closed down last month, but if Kings Island were to create something new to honor the legacy of that historic park, what would you like to see them do? And I must mention that he put the U in honor, so he's classy. He spells it the British way. I think that's cool. Parker, well, Don, I'll start with you. What would you do if you were to say, like, how do we pay tribute to Coney Island with Kings Island? What are some ideas you have?
Oh, wow. There are some of those legacy attractions that are still at the park from Coney Island. Maybe it would be as simple as putting, a plaque out front of the entrance of each one to kind of let the guests know, the roots of that ride, where it came from, that it was part of those original attractions that were transported from Coney for the park's first season in 1972. I mean, you see that with the, if you're riding the Beast, you see the Ace landmark
Mhm.
plaque. Something like that, that would be, at the entrance of those rides, just to let them know that, those rides had a history before Kings Island.
Absolutely. I do like that idea. We had discussed earlier, somebody asked, if you were going to retheme the Fest House, what would it be? And I think they pitched the idea of Moonlight Gardens as the name. I think that would be an awesome tribute. The one thing I would be concerned with moving forward is that uh, obviously you lived through the move. For me, it's like I've always known that, even as a kid, that Kings Island's roots go back to Coney Island. It flooded a lot. They had nowhere to expand. They moved up 71. So, but I'd be afraid that the younger generation wouldn't get that if there's no Coney Island to be like, oh, that's where it came from. So I like your plaques idea.
Yeah, I think there'd be a lot of that, especially, as much as I love the name Moonlight Gardens for the Fest House,
Mm.
that's not going to connect with a lot of guests today because, they didn't grow up with Coney Island. Um, but I do think, something like the plaques,
Mhm.
that works for everybody because everyone's always interested in history. It gives them something to read before they, enter the queue and everything. So maybe that can work. Maybe it's Moonlight Gardens for the Fest House. But there's got to be a way to kind of, I think you always want to let people know where you came from.
Yeah, and it's
And
not
Coney Island,
uninteresting. It's definitely one of the more
oh,
interesting park histories. Yeah, and the fact
it
that
is.
we
And
have people alive today that can tell the story, that Gary Walks and Dennis Spiegel and, a myriad of others can be like, "Yeah, we were sitting in this boardroom and we made this decision." And I mean, we just had Dennis Spiegel on, and he was talking about, like, we had to inventory all the forks and the knives and everything, and we're gonna have him on again to tell more anecdotes like that. But we're so fortunate to be in a situation where we have people we can talk to that were firsthand encounters of this whole situation.
yeah,
But
and with Coney Island, the thing about it is it wasn't a park that wasn't doing well. I mean, they drew, great crowds,
mhm,
especially the last season. They were acknowledged as one of the finest amusement parks in the country. Walt Disney got his inspiration for Disneyland from Coney Island. So, I mean, there's just a lot of history there. And it was only because of the flooding and they were landlocked, couldn't expand, that they had to look elsewhere. So, it'd be great to give a nod to that. I think the 50th anniversary that Kings Island did a couple years ago did a great job, talking about the park's history. There was a little touch in the nighttime show, where they have the speech, the final night of Coney closing, and you
mhm.
talk about it that way. But I think now that you're past the 50th, you know now would be the time to start integrating some of those stories from the Coney Island area. I think it has to be something that still connects to Kings Island guests, and that's why it would be those original attractions.
Yeah, and this comes back to the idea that it gets thrown at us like twice a week is the museum. But the museum would have to be done right. Somebody online made probably the pretty accurate comment of, if they built a museum, I would love it. I would go in and enjoy it. Most people would go in there if it's air conditioned and just hang out. Which I think is absolutely true, but at the same time, a museum from 1980 was far less captivating than a museum from 2024. Make it interactive, make it so people wanna learn, have models, tell the story rather than facts and artifacts and stuff like that, where you and I would love to go to a museum that's all shelves of Coney Island stuff, but some 13-year-old wouldn't. But if you say, like, tell the story, the narrative is what's attractive.
Mhm.
So excellent question, Parker. Thank you so much for submitting. All right. I'm Ryan Sir along with Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics.